here, when we went down through verse 3, we're going to pick up at verse 4. More unique things are going to take place in the prophet's life, in the instructions that he's going to receive from God about the calling to be a prophet that he's been is receiving. By the way, you remember he is a priest, but has no temple in order to minister in, because he is in Babylonian captivity. He's part of the exiles. He's in the southern part of the Babylonian Empire, far from Babylon. He was there along with other captives that were taken there in 601 BC. There were 3 deportations that took place of the inhabitants of Judah. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were part of the first deportation. The second deportation, it seems that Ezekiel, along with some others, were taken captive or exiled. And then finally there's going to be a third exile when Jerusalem itself would fall to the Babylonians. And that would be in 521-22 BC. That's when that took place. So that's kind of the background of where we're at. At that canal at Sebar, where Ezekiel lives, that's where the call of God comes upon his life. And it's interesting how God does different things with different people. In other words, he somewhat tailors his calling depending upon the particular prophet that he's calling. And that also transpires down through the ages to us as well. We need to be kind of mindful that, I'll give you an example. I had a professor. He grew up at the First Baptist Church of Greenville, Mississippi. And Dr. Kanoy told the story about every time that a new pastor would come to that church that he grew up in, the pastor somehow in the sermon or somewhere else would talk about his own salvation experience. And then there were people in that congregation that would be, this is crazy for Baptists to say this, but would be saved again because they were not saved in their minds, at least like the pastor was. So they want to emulate his experience. Well, we need to be careful about that, because experiences with God can be quite unique. For example, how many different ways, or to how many different people did God communicate through a fleece? Whether it was dry or wet, how many people? One. Well, how many people did God communicate to through a burning bush? One. You know, if Moses would have been alive today, I think he probably would have written a book, How I Had My Burning Bush Experience and How You Can Have Yours. I think he probably would do that. And make $1 million or more. Because there'd be a lot of Christians out there wanting their own burning bush. What you will find, and you read through Scripture, you'll find this. You'll find there's a lot of variety in how God deals with people. Not everyone is a carbon copy of everyone else. There's uniqueness there. And God is incredibly creative. And he doesn't repeat himself in the sense of everybody getting the burning bush, or everybody getting a fleece, or along those kind of lines, or a talking donkey for that matter. Yeah. You know, I've been around a few donkeys, but never one said a word to me. At least not that I could comprehend. So, just kind of bear that in mind. Let's go pick up verse 4. Then he said to me, Son of man, go to the house of Israel and speak with my words to them. Now it's interesting. God is building a fence around what he wants Ezekiel to say. He's not telling Ezekiel, go and say these words to them or preach this sermon to them. He says, speak my words to them. So Ezekiel is not going to be notably creative in his sermons. He's going to be taking what God tells him and he's going to repeat what God tells him to the people. Verse 5. For you are not being sent to a people of unintelligible speech or difficult language, but to the house of Israel. So, okay, he's even been more precise. To whom is Ezekiel to go speak? To the exiles of Israel. That is his audience. That's to whom he is going to communicate the message that God gives him. Nor to many peoples of unintelligible speech or difficult language, whose words you cannot understand, but I have sent you to the people who understand you. Yet, and so you always got to watch for the yet, the house of Israel will not be willing to listen to you. That's just what a preacher wants to hear. Right? You're going to go with this message, but they're not going to pay you. They're going to listen to you. They're not going to pay any attention to what you say. I saw a preacher one time, James Robinson, as a matter of fact, years ago. I mean, this is probably 45 years ago. He was talking about, he was preaching a revival service or some sort of service somewhere in a big church. And it was just dead silent out there. Nobody was even kind of moving. People seemed bored or whatever. So he just picked up his Bible and he walked over to the wall and he started preaching to the wall. Because the wall was just as responsive as the people were. I don't know how well that, he may not have been invited back again after that, but he just went in and started preaching to the wall because the people were not listening. Okay, that's what's going to happen, Ezekiel. Yet they're not going to listen to you since they are not willing to listen to me. Now that is an interesting statement, I think, on multiple levels. On one level, it's this. Ezekiel, you're going to be preaching my words. And they're not going to listen. You know why they're not going to listen, Ezekiel? Because they don't listen to me. That's God speaking. They do not listen to me. And so Ezekiel, you're going to have to, and God's going to prepare him here. You're going to have to kind of buckle it up here. Because there's a couple of things that could take place. Number one, you could get tired and wonder, why am I even doing this? They're not listening. I'd rather go fishing in the canal. Maybe that's a better way of spending my time. They're not going to listen. Secondly, you could get kind of dismayed about the whole thing. There's I can't remember what chapter it is in Jeremiah, but Jeremiah gets really to the place where he wants to quit. They're not listening to him. People don't care what he's saying. And he finally gets ticked to the point that he gets mad at God. And he says something to this effect, depending on your translation, how they render this. God, you deceived me, and I was deceived. I thought people would listen. I thought people would respond. I thought I was carrying your message. I thought there'd be a response from the people. There is none. God, I really thought this would be different than this. I don't like this. I'm done. I'm done. And then he says, but it's like a fire in my bones. He could not keep silent. He wanted to, but he didn't. He couldn't. Ezekiel, what's going to happen? The entire house of Israel certainly is stubborn and obstinate. Behold, I have made your face just as hard as their faces, and your forehead just as hard as their foreheads. Like emery harder than flint, I have made your forehead. Do not be afraid of them or be dismayed before them, since they are a rebellious house. It's like, man, this is going to not be fun. But I'm going to make you just as hard-headed as they are. I know it's more of a Hebraic kind of statement. We talked about your forehead being hard. It means it's not penetrating your brain. The people are not going to be listening, but you're going to keep at it because you're going to be stubborn about it. As they're stubborn about it. And don't be dismayed, when you see the faces of the people that are hearing what you're saying. Don't let that persuade you to give up, people are not going to like it much. And by the way, folks, I'm not out trying to be overly critical of modern Christianity, but I want to tell you something. What passes for a modern Christianity in the United States is a poor substitute of the real thing. It really is. Because the focus and the interest and all of that is so different than it once was. I was talking to someone today about some names from the past. Where are these people? Like Leonard Ravenhill. You may not know who that is. May not be right. He didn't go out and try to make a name for himself or make a movement. But he was a preacher that had the fire of God in his stomach, and he let it go. And he was so British that you could hardly understand the man when he speaks. You know, he speaks a different form of English than the rest of us. Or of an A.W. Tozer. Tozer had local interest, but not worldwide interest in his ministry. He's probably more popular now, dead, by some who read his books, than he may have been when he was alive. That's just a couple of people. You don't see those folks anymore. You really don't. You know, some years ago, what is his name? He had 3 names. He actually used to live in Chicago. Richard Owen Roberts. You may recognize the name. Some of you may do that. He was talking about a fella that he bought books and traded books and did work with from England. And if the Englishman came to the United States and he was going to spend, I don't know, a considerable period of time, 6 months, something like that. I don't know what it was. He's going to be traveling around the United States listening to the most popular preachers. Now, I don't know who he went and listened to. Roberts didn't say that. But what he did, he went around to some of the most well-known, and then he came back and he's talking to Roberts. He said, and this is also from Jeremiah. He said, and he said, the fella, he took his hand and he smashed the table hard as he could, or very hard. When Roberts asked him about his experiences, he said, I didn't hear any preaching. He said, the Word of God is a hammer that crushes. I didn't hear it. There was no hammer. It's a fire that consumes. I saw no fire. So he was just responding to those kind of things. Ezekiel is going to be that kind of preacher, prophet. He's going to preach before he gets to the prophetic part. That's going to be for the latter part of the book. But that's what the kind of preacher he's going to be. And those type of individuals you may never hear of. But anyway, let me go on. I don't want to get too sidetracked. Verse 8. Behold, I have made your face just as hard as their faces, and your forehead just as hard as their foreheads. Like Emery, we'd read that one. Verse 10 now. Moreover, he said to me, Son of man, take into your heart all my words, which I will speak to you, and listen closely. Go to the exiles, to the sons of your people, and speak to them and tell them whether they listen or not. This is what the Lord Yahweh says. Then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard a great rumbling sound behind me. Blessed be the glory of the Lord, or of Yahweh, from his place. So remember what happened in chapter 1? And that magnificent vision he had of these 4 creatures and the wheels within the wheel, and the cloud that came. It looked like we'd call it a tornado coming, and then above that, all of that going on, there was that expanse, and there was one sitting upon a throne, and the description there that how glorious his appearance was. And it was that one that began speaking to Ezekiel, that being, of course, the Lord. It's happening again. Behind him this time. And verse 13, and I heard the sound of the wings of the living beings touching one another, and the sound of the wheels beside them, even a great rumbling sound. So you get the picture again of what we saw in chapter 1. Once again, there's this manifestation or this heavenly door opening up for Ezekiel to hear what was already there. But now he was aware. He could hear it. He could hear, and it's the same description as he gave in chapter 1. So, verse 14, the Spirit lifted me up and took me away. And I went embittered in the rage of my spirit. And the hand of the Lord was strong on me. Okay, the Spirit of the Lord takes him up. And it's interesting the way this translation is rendering what Ezekiel experienced. He was experiencing bitterness. He was embittered in rage of my spirit. Why? Why was he embittered? Why was he angry? In rage in his spirit.
Maybe because they wouldn't listen.
Yeah, they're not going to listen. That's one thing. Another thing could be, along with that same line, is that he has experienced the holiness of God, living in the unholy area of God's people. There's something there. Years ago, Michael Card wrote a song. It could be called "The Prophet," and he cites different prophets in that song. But in the chorus, he talks about I won't be able to get the words exactly right because I haven't listened to it for a long, long time. He's talking about, I am the prophet and I smolder and burn. I scream and cry and wonder why you never seem to learn. That the prophets had that about them. Just a passion, a desire, a calling. We could use a lot of different types of expressions trying to apprehend what that experience would be like. But the hard part is being in touch with the holiness of God and then realizing that the people were satisfied being unholy. And it just doesn't make sense. Why do you want to be an unholy person when you can experience the holiness of the Holy One? Like I mentioned before, like Isaiah in chapter 6, when in his call, his vision, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. When he is so impacted by that, throughout the balance of the book, you'll find him referring to God many times as the Holy One of Israel. He uses that adjective, pointing out the Holy One, because he was forever changed. He was forever changed because of that encounter with the living God. And in reality, you and me and every other professing believer has the opportunity to be very impacted, significantly impacted by the Holy One. So much so that we want nothing else. It's David writing in Psalm 27, one thing that I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And he says this, really an odd statement when you think about it in our context today, beholding the beauty of the Lord and to meditate in his temple. That is, you think about that. David is talking about the beauty of the Lord. Do we ever describe God like that? I'm not going to put you on the spot. I just want you to think about it for a bit. Okay, what else we got going? Verse 15. Then I came to the exiles who live beside the river Sibar at Tel Aviv, and I sat down for 7 days where they were living, causing consternation among them. Now, remember I mentioned to you that Hebrew words, because there are so few of them, can be translated in various nuances. There's a lot of a spectrum that a word can mean, depending on its context. You may have a translation that renders this differently. Something to the effect, not simply consternation among the people who are around him, but his own self. He's going to sit there for 7 days after this last experience. 7 days he's going to sit there and really say nothing. Now there's a bit of irony worked into this. The irony is he is to proclaim God's words that God gives him, but he's going to sit there 7 days without saying a thing. Now at the end of the 7 days, the word of the Lord, of Yahweh, came to me, saying, Son of man. Now this is where the chart that I gave you will come in. In the next few verses, we're going to see 3 different cases or situations. One is going to be a warning to the wicked. Another is going to be a warning also to the wicked, but with a little bit different focus. Then the warning to the righteous, number 3, and then also a warning to the righteous, again in verse 21. And there's going to be a bit of a change in those 2 categories that end up being technically 4. All right? So I give you that kind of to make you aware of where we're going. A watchman. Son of man, I've appointed you a watchman for the house of Israel. Now, we don't know what a watchman truly is, because we don't have the need for a watchman on this capacity. Now, we have people that are paying attention to what's going on, trying to keep people safe. But a watchman's responsibility was really to be at a kind of a high-level place. It could be on the wall of a walled city, or on a hilltop, or even in the top of a tree if necessary. Somewhere where he has a better view of the geography around where the people were. His job was quite simple. He was to pay attention and to be the first one to see if there's a threat coming or if there's something good coming. He was to be the first one to announce that. You need someone, everybody else is going about their everyday life. They're taking care of their animals, they're taking care of their children, they're getting washed, they're going to go get water, they're cooking food, they're working a field. So they're distracted doing the necessary acts, chores of life. But a watchman's responsibility was to announce of any kind of approaching threat in order to give people time to prepare or to flee or whatever it might be. That was his job. And at times, you can imagine, you think it got boring? I'm sure it got boring. He might be thinking about other things he'd rather be doing. But his job was simple. You are the one that is going to be able to raise the alarm to hopefully help others to be prepared or to get out of the way of danger. That's your job. So God has pointed this prophet, Ezekiel, to be a watchman. Let's look at the different people that he's going to be dealing with. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, warn them from me. When I say to the wicked, you will certainly die, and you do not warn him or speak out to warn the wicked from his wicked way, so that he may live, the wicked person shall die for wrongdoing. but his blood I require from your hand. So when you see the faces twist up and contort because the people do not like what they're hearing from your mouth, don't stop. Don't stop speaking my words. Because you're warning the wicked man. And of course it'd be the wicked woman too. You are warning the wicked person, if they do not turn from their wicked ways, they're going to die. Now, if you don't tell them the truth, I will require their blood on your hands. Now, they're dying for their own wickedness. That's not changed, but you did not warn them of the impending danger. And because you failed to do what you are called to do, to be a watchman, you're responsible. You're responsible. Secondly, however, if you have warned the wicked, and he does not turn from his wickedness, or from his wicked way, he shall die for his wrongdoing, but you have saved yourself. You've told them. And it's on them. It's not on you. If you don't tell them, it's on you. If you do tell them, it's not on you. So we can go pretty deep with that, but I think it's probably enough at this point. You understand that when you're talking to people who are living, and you probably have family members, you have friends, you have all kinds of folks that are living out of fellowship with God, or don't even know God at all. They probably don't want to hear you say across the Christmas dinner table, what you're doing is not good. God is noticing in that, and there's going to be a payday someday for that. It's easier just to keep your mouth shut, right? I mean, come on, don't be a troublemaker. Don't be a troublemaker. Just keep quiet. Just let it go. Yes.
I don't think any of us had this experience, but where God would like lay somebody on your heart to say something, and you've had a few opportunities, let some peer pressure, different things like that, cause you not to say something. And in my specific incident, I didn't listen, and anyway, that person died, and it just really hit me that why didn't you just say something? Or your pride getting in the way, or whatever. It's tough.
I'm going to tell you, it is incredibly hard because you'll be called all kinds of names by some. You'll be called judgmental. You'll be called self-righteous. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? But when you remain silent, I'm not saying we're watchmen in the sense that Ezekiel was. I'm not trying to apply that job to us per se. But when you just look the other way, do you really care about that person? Mm-hmm. I mean, really, I don't care if it's a son or a daughter or mom or dad or brother or sister or a cousin or neighbor or best friend. It doesn't matter. When you don't say anything, your silence is taken as consent. And people won't like it at all. They really will. They just, people will not respond well when, who are you to judge? Judge not lest you be judged, right? Used to be the most well-known Bible verse was John 3:16, but today it is not. It is judge not lest you be judged. Mm-hmm. Well, you get the point. Let's move a bit further. Again, verse 20. When a righteous person turns from his righteousness and commits sin, and I place an obstacle before him, he will die. Since you have not warned him, he shall die in his sin, and his righteous deeds which he has done shall not be remembered, but his blood who does something unrighteous. Now, righteousness in the Old Testament is a bit different than righteousness in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, righteousness is talking about the obedience to the law of God. A righteous person is one who obeys the law of God, the law of Moses, who doesn't eat shrimp, doesn't eat pork. He offers his sacrifices. He does his prayers. He does the things that the law requires him to do. That's righteous in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, the idea of righteous is quite different, in the sense that our righteousness in the New Testament is what is referred to basically as imputed righteousness, meaning that my righteousness in myself can never please God, because it will never be. Now I'm talking about my own efforts. It will never be up to God's standard of perfection, because I am not perfect. Matter of fact, I'm a long way from it. Just ask my wife how far I am. Long way from it. But the righteousness that I enjoy has been given to me as a gift of grace, and is the righteousness of Christ. His righteousness. That's what I mean when it's be imputed or given. I'm covered by His righteousness. So even though I personally am not righteous to the point of pleasing God, I can please God because of what Jesus has done for me. Are you following me here? I hope you understand that, because it's real freeing once you understand. Even though you fail, even though I fail, even though we at times are just miserable failures, it is the righteousness of Christ that covers us, or has been given to us. So when God looks upon us, whose righteousness does He see? Not mine, because I don't have any, but Christ's righteousness. So there's a little bit of difference there. So he's talking about a man, because he talks about his righteous deeds will not basically prevent his demise. He's talking about the righteous acts of keeping the law, which no man ever kept perfectly except the Lord Jesus. So we talked about him. However, verse 21, if you have warned the righteous person that the righteous is not sin, and he does not sin, he shall certainly live, because he took warning, and you have saved yourself. Okay, so there you have the outworkings of that. Of a wicked person who you don't warn, and a wicked person who you do warn. And a righteous person that you don't warn to a righteous person that you do warn. Okay? That's the dynamic going on there. That's what the little chart represents. Okay? But more's coming. Verse 22. Now, you may have a Bible that will let you know that a new paragraph is starting here. Maybe if you've got one, maybe indented, or it may have a darker number or a little paragraph symbol there by it or whatever. But we'll go on to verse 22. Now the hand of the Lord was on me there, and He said to me, get up and go to the plain, and there I will speak to you. So I got up and went out to the plain. Now, 7 days He didn't do anything. Now He went out to this plain. And behold, the glory of the Lord was standing there. And that's an interesting statement, isn't it? The glory of the Lord is standing there. So what do you think that looked like? You probably know, you just don't know that you know.
Pillar of fire.
If it's nighttime, it could be, but in the daytime, what do you think it is?
Cloud.
The cloud. The cloud. The Shekinah glory. Have you heard that word? Yeah, it was above the tabernacle. And in the daytime, it was a cloud. At nighttime, it was fire. And when it moved, they moved. When it stood still, they stood still. That kind of thing. The Shekinah glory cloud is mentioned several times in the Bible. It's not always called the Shekinah glory by that way. But you find it also in the temple. When Solomon dedicates the temple, when he does that, the temple during the glory cloud comes down and it fills the temple, and the ministering priests there have to get out because the glory is there. And the word glory literally means heavy. It's heavy. So they had to leave. Another occasion is on the Mount of Transfiguration. There, as Jesus is there, he's transfigured. Moses and Elijah come and are talking to him. Peter, James, and John are there, and they're watching all this, and they're pretty well frightened beyond reason. Probably, I mean, they're terrified. And then the cloud consumes them, and a voice speaks from the cloud. Remember? And then one other occasion to mention is at the Ascension. Jesus is talking to his followers. And as he's talking to them, he rises off the ground and he's received into a what? Cloud. That's all the same cloud we're talking about. That's God's glory. And how is he going to come back according to the angel's words? Same way. Okay. So I went up to the plain, and behold, the glory of the Lord was standing there, like the glory that I saw by the river. And I fell on my face. Now this happened in chapter 1 too. He fell on his face. And even though you and I may not experience it in this life like Ezekiel did, but if we came to where the glory of God was standing in front of us, you know what you're going to do? You're going to fall on your face. You're going to fall on your face. You're going to be so overwhelmed with the holiness and the holy presence of God. That's what you're going to do. That's what's happened in several different places in the Old and New Testament, for that matter. And the Spirit entered me and set me on my feet. He needs help up, doesn't he? You know, at one time I could hit the floor and bounce right back up. A little bit slower now. The getting up part, I could fall about the same speed, but the getting up is a little bit slower. The Spirit entered me and set me on my feet, and He spoke with me, and He said to me, "Go shut yourself inside your house." I like the irony of this. What's His job?
Tell everybody.
He said, tell the words of God. He's supposed to be the watchman on the wall. He's supposed to be that. So God tells him, I want you to go into your house and shut yourself up. That's interesting. But God knows what He's doing. So, and He said to me, Son of man, they will put ropes around you and bind you with them so that you do not go out among them. A lot of discussion about what's going on here. Who's the they? We don't know who they are. It could be that God Himself, maybe through agency of some of those living creatures, or living beings that we've already met, maybe they bind Him inside the house. In other words, He's going to stay in there. Moreover, I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth, so that you will be unable to speak, and will not be a man who reprimands them, since they are a rebellious house. Not only are you going into your house and you're going to be shut in, not only are you going to feel like you're bound and tied up, however that is experienced, you're going to be mute. Now, think about what is going on in Ezekiel's mind. Here I am called to be a watchman. I've got to use my voice. Here I'm going to repeat the words of God. I've got to use my voice. So what does God do to me? He makes me mute. I can't speak. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Quite interesting. But when I speak to you, I will open your mouth, And you will say to them, this is what the Lord God says. The one who hears, let him hear. And the one who refuses, let him refuse. For they are a rebellious house. All right. Now, this is we're going to begin starting in verse 22, all the way to about chapter 33. We're kind of in the same scene. There's going to be different things taking place, but kind of the same kind of thing. It's going to be transpiring there. I want to let me give you first an opportunity to ask questions or contribute an insight or something like that if you have any. Feel free to do that before I conclude with a C.S. Lewis story. Yes.
Just thinking about like the warning people thing, and I'm kind of so I was at college at like in a Christian community, and so I was surrounded by Christians, and then I started medical school, and I'm kind of the minority, and I might be maybe someone's like only experience with a Christian, and I've been trying to approach it as like being like overly kind and
Right.
loving, and because I want people to like have that experience with Christianity, but it's hard for me to picture like rebuking some of those classmates, and like I don't know, it's just tough to swallow, I guess.
It's very challenging when you're in a non-Christian or an unchristian environment, and even in a Christian environment with a lot of different varieties of well, you may have a liberal Christian view or some of those kind of things. It's a challenge. You are on the right track, in my estimation. And in order to win a hearing, you need to be able to have a relationship with a person. I mean, honestly, you can go out and stand on a street corner and say, turn or burn. And there may be one person that's going to listen. Most people are just going to say, you're a nut, and go on about their business. That's just the way they're going to be. You're really not going to make much of an impact in the lives of those folks, other than what God will do in the lives of those folks. Now, if God tells you to do that, that's one thing. That's one thing. But you need to be sure that God is telling you to do that. That God is leading you. That's what He wants you to do. If He does, do it. But when you begin, you almost have to, especially in today's world, because most people, I say most people, the majority of people don't even know what a Christian really is. They really don't. They think that we're all kind of nutty. And they really don't want to be. But when they see that you're a sane person, and that you have a relationship with them to some degree where you can actually speak into their life. And they might even ask you, Peter talks about this, that when someone asks you about the hope that's within you, be able to give a defense for the hope that is within you. That emphasizes the idea, I think, at least, of people seeing in you something different. For example, and I'm using just hypotheticals here. For example, somebody gets the test, and in your study group, they're studying the test that they're thinking they're going to take the next day, and you refuse to do it as a Christian. They may make fun of you, but they're going to wonder why. Yeah. Why would you not? If you've got the answers, study. I had a class where we were getting ready to have a test. It was a human. It was a class. Oh, whatever it was. It was a hard class. It was just memorization, and we were doing that, and about different parts what the body does at certain kinds of movements. Anyway, I actually got a cousin who's got a PhD in it, and I can't think of the word right now. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It does, because I can't think of the word. But anyway, there was a couple of jocks in there. One of them had stolen the test, and Dr. Smith never changed the test. So we were sitting down there, and it was all multiple choice. And this here's a basketball player. One of them said, one of basketball, you ready for the test? He said, yeah. He's going, A, B, C, right on down through there. He said, well, what questions are those? I said, I don't know. I just studied the answers. So I'm just going to go down and do the answer. Now, the thing of it is, he's going to pass the test because Dr. Smith never changed the test. And so he cheated. Proud of it. But when you don't, people are going to notice, and then eventually they're going to ask why. You're going to win a hearing. Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? Well, just from my perspective, I don't want a doctor that's done that. I want a doctor that knows his stuff and not just memorize the answers to a test. You know what I'm saying? Oh, anyway, another story. But I understand what you're saying. And maybe in blatant issues, like, and then I know I'm speaking kind of in your direction here, but somewhere in your training, you're going to come across the issue of abortion. You're going to come across it. Or it might even be gender-affirming surgeries or something like that. And you want to be probably on one side of the issue, and the majority of everybody else is on the other side. In that kind of context, you need to be able to give a defense of why you believe what you believe, why you believe it, and just leave it to there. Some may ridicule, but some are going to be thinking because they've never thought of it that way. And you can prepare yourself with the kind of questions you can ask. Just a good resource is a book written by Greg Kokel called Tactics. And the thing of it is how to use questions. And one of those aspects of there, he calls it the professor's ploy. We're about the issue of the burden of proof. So all of you are just listening to our discussion, right? And it's really helpful. Because you can get so much further with questions instead of making declarative statements. You can get so much further. Because most people have never really thought through why they believe what they believe. And when you ask them questions to defend what they believe, they might end up with egg on their face. So anyway, the rebellious house. Rebellious house. Now, C.S. Lewis story. You ready for it? Okay. Here it is quickly. In his book called A Horse and His Boy. I know it sounds odd to you, but if you have to read the story to get it. But in that story, there is in one segment, the boy riding his horse's name is Philip, and it's a talking horse. It's a pretty good horse. I'd like to have one of those. But anyway, he's riding that horse, and as he's riding that horse, along with him is a princess that has escaped her confinement in a palace because she's tired of that. And they were riding along together, and what they can't see him, but they hear something running alongside of them in the forest. And whatever it is, it's running as fast as the horses are. And they're getting more and more, afraid, a little bit concerned about this. And then emerges out of there comes the lion, and he goes right for the princess, pulls his claws out, and it goes right down her back and disappears back. That's it. Later, they meet the lion again. And the lion is Aslan, the Christ figure in his stories. Well, Aslan, the boy asked Aslan, why did you do that? And he said, well, it's really not your concern. It was for her. Because when the woman that was responsible for caring for her, when the princess escapes, she gets a lashing with a whip. And the princess that was for her. Just for her. so she would know what she caused the other woman to experience, you see. And when we come to Ezekiel like this, that's something similar for us as well. Don't expect one size to fit all. Christianity is not a comfortable hat. It just isn't. And our experiences, holding on to the fundamentals of the faith, to be sure. Holding on to the Bible as being the authoritative, inspired Word of God, yes. But there will be differences. We're in different contexts. You're going to face things that I won't face. And I'm going to face things that you probably won't face. Same thing for everybody else. All right, you tolerated all that, so you're free to go.